night floats over the continent like a cool, deep lake, unbroken by engine hum or copper wire, its surface silvered by stars so bright they seem to ring with quiet music. Before we begin, I would love to know where in the world you are listening from and what's the time there. Let us know in the comments. Thank you so much for being the part of my community. Let's get started. Below that velvet hush sprawls an ancient sea of forest, oak and chestnut, beech and pine, stretching from the Atlantic's salt-stitched breath all the way to the rolling grasslands of the interior. In these dark hours, every tree is a column holding up the sky, every leaf a small lantern gathering dew, and every slow pulse of wind a lullaby older than stories. Beneath the canopy, moss glimmers faintly, lucent with moon milk, and streams murmur through root and stone in voices only the listening earth can truly understand. The world is vast, but tonight it beats with one steady heart. In that hush, a soft tremor rises, not a storm, not a branch breaking, but a kind of breathing made of feathers. Far above the ground, along slender boughs that knit one crown of green to another, hundreds of birds rest with heads tucked beneath charcoal wings. Their slumber is a light thing. The moment a leaf shifts or a night moth brushes air too near, each eye flickers open like a pale amber gem. These are passenger pigeons, though no one has named them yet. They are simply life in motion, the pulse of sunrise carried on wings. Their bodies are small, their hearts quick, yet they gather in numbers that bend trees and darken the sky. They are a single thought expressed by millions of beating hearts. When dawn lingers just beyond the horizon, softening the edges of every shadow, a subtle restlessness stirs among them. One bird, neither leader nor follower, merely awake first, ruffles her rust-pink breast, loosens her claws from bark, and drops. The air seems to sigh around her, parting to cradle the glide of slate-blue wings. In an instant, the branch where she slept becomes a living thing, breaking into pieces that whirl and lift. Birds upon birds upon birds, each answering the quiet call to motion. From neighboring trees, the tremor spreads like sparks over dry grass, a secret uncurling until the entire wood hums with ascending wings. Their rising is not frantic, it is fluid, deliberate, tender as water seeking its own level. First, a hush of feathers, then a breeze created by bodies alone, and at last the low, endless roar, a river of sound the forest knows by heart. Leaves shiver but do not tear. Deer lift calm heads to watch, ears flicking. Even the fox pausing at the stream's bend lets the flock's shadow glide over his muzzle without unease. This eruption is older than any fear. It is the morning stretch of the world itself. They climb higher, catching light that has only just begun to spill from the eastern rim of sky. Wings catch flame at the tips, throats blush gold, and their eyes, round, dark, bright, reflect a sun still hidden from every creature on the forest floor. From above, the vast wood is a rippling quilt, valleys stitched with fog, rivers shining like hammered pewter beneath lingering dusk. Within that panorama, each bird is both alone and utterly entwined, aware of the feather whisper beside her and the storm-soft rush of thousands more. In the open air, the flock begins its long, measured drift south, though no map marks the route. The path is etched instead in memory older than bone, an unerring pull toward ripening mast and warming wind. They move in braided streams. Here a ribbon no wider than a country lane. There a rope thick as nightfall spread from horizon to horizon. Below, a solitary pine, limbs weighted by nested birds still reluctant to stir, slowly bows until its crown brushes ground. Then, with a low creak, it rights itself again, relieved of its living burden. Sunlight finally crests the treetops, and the full palette of dawn ignites. Plum and rose bleed to amber. Clouds peel back like silk curtains. Shadows withdraw into their quiet corners. And under that blossoming sky, the passenger pigeons become more than birds. They are dusk remembered at dawn, twilight folded into daybreak. They carve paths through new light, paths that widen quickly, for the flock is not one band but many, each merging until the air itself seems woven with motion. To those on the ground, though scarcely any will see them for centuries yet unseen, the spectacle could be mistaken for rolling thunder. The sound is low, resonant, something felt in the heart more than heard by the ear. Occasionally, a shaft of sun finds a gap in the river of birds and reveals the forest floor in sudden, honeyed brilliance. Ferns glow green gold, spider silk flashes silver. Then the sky closes once more with ruffled slate backlit by flame. It is a heartbeat rhythm, light, shadow, hush, roar, stillness, flight. As morning matures, the flock settles into its slow grandeur, neither hurried nor idle. They fly just high enough to read every shift of wind, low enough to taste the perfume of opening blossoms and new cracked nuts. Their eyes mark pockets of acorns fattening on distant oaks, note groves where last year's hickory buds have finally burst. Yet there is no sense of greed or conquest, only belonging. The forest feeds them, and they, in turn, carry seeds miles from the parent trees, retelling the story of green wherever they roost. In this way, forest and pigeon write one another's names upon the land. Midday finds them drifting over a broad river veined with lazy sunlight. The flock ripples, bends, and minute by minute the line thins as birds spiral downward, skimming the water's mirror. They drink in quick, graceful dips, wings beating just above the surface, tiny feet ghosting the glass-bright current. Droplets flash around them like scattered gemstones. When thirst is quenched, they rise again, finding their place in the sweeping braid. None are lost. The moving whole remembers every part. By afternoon, heat gathers atop the canopy. Resin perfumes the air. Cicadas drone a steady lullaby. The birds ease their labor, gliding on updrafts that shimmer visibly. Sunlight flares against primary feathers, and for a moment each pigeon is painted with invisible fire. Below them, the forest seems to breathe in sleep, but within that dreamy quiet, a million lives go on. Bear cubs test their claws on rotted logs, turtles wedge deeper into mud, and countless smaller wings, warblers, thrushes, swallowtails, flutter amid understories glowing green as cathedral glass. All of them live beneath a sky that sings with pigeon thunder. Late day's light drifts toward brass, then copper. The flock banks west, seeking the welcoming arms of an untouched oak savanna, where evening breezes cool the earth sooner than in deep woods. Shadows lengthen. Crisp leaf murmur rises like applause. One pigeon, old by measure of her kind, yet still quick, dives first, curling her wings at the last moment to alight upon a sturdy branch. Branch answers body with a muted thump, and the settling of feathers echoes along 1,000 neighboring perches. Birds arrive in waves, branches bending, leaves frothing, dusk shimmering with soft landings. Soon, the hush of wings is replaced by the rustle of settling bodies, by low coos that sound like water in a stone bowl. Twilight washes the savanna in lavender. Somewhere, a whip-poor-will resumes his song, threading notes between the flock's gentle murmur. Overhead, the moon rises fat and yellow, snagging its edge upon the highest bough before floating free. Beneath that moon, the pigeons preen, nuzzle, sigh. They tuck beaks under wing, eyes half lit, and one by one surrender to drowsy quiet. The great tree, burdened yet unbowed, rocks them with breaths of wind, its leaves whispering cradle songs to any ear patient enough to listen. Yet, even in rest, something ancient turns in the marrow of every bird. A compass not of steel, but of memory, drawing them onward long after feathers still. Tomorrow they will rise again, as sun returns and shadows retreat, and the forest will feel that same tremor echo across its waking bones. But tonight, the story waits in fertile silence. Sap pulses upward. Acorns swell under their cups. The river keeps its silver promise to reflect another dawn. Far beyond the savanna, deeper in the endless green, one branch holds a single nest woven of twigs, grasses, and quiet hope. In that neat cup lies an egg smooth as polished quartz, mottled with faint lavender specks, a moonlet cradled by mossy bark. Above it, the mother pigeon stands watchful but serene, body warming the fragile shell, heartbeat thrumming a lullaby only the chick inside can hear. She dreams with open eyes of vast flocks and sun-bright currents, of clouds parted by wings and forests blooming, beneath endless rivers of flight. Around her, the night draws its curtains. Frogs begin their measured chanting, and an owl's low question floats through blue shadow. Stars wheel with patient grace overhead. The egg slumbers, and within it a heartbeat stirs, a tiny tremor no larger than a grain of sand, yet potent as thunder in the making. The mother shifts, the branch sways, and across miles of forest the resting flock breathes as one. In that breath, steady, wide as the horizon, the world holds itself poised between what has been and what will be. The ancient river of wings murmurs in its sleep, and somewhere inside a shell no thicker than a fingernail, life flexes the ghost of a future wing. Dawn is only hours away, but time itself seems to hush, to wait, suspended in the velvet cradle of darkness. When the first pale thread of morning pulls taut along the sky's hem, it will tug at feathers, at leaves, at the membrane of a dreaming chick. But for now the forest settles deeper, as though covering itself with a quilt of shadow and dew. Above, the moon glides westward, unhurried. Below, roots twist in earth rich with stories yet to bloom. And in that murmuring stillness a promise lingers, of light against feather, of wind beneath flight, of voices rising like waves across the endless green. So rest, gentle sky river. Rest, forest of breathing leaves. Rest, small sleeping heart inside the porcelain, fragile shell. The world waits with you, wrapped in the hush before the first wing beat. And somewhere in that vast, listening night, a single note of dawn clears its throat, readying to sing the flocks awake. Morning slips softly into the forest, like water seeping into thirsty moss. The light comes not in a rush, but in pale threads, weaving through the tangle of branches and unraveling the deep blue of night. Somewhere high in that lattice of green and gold, a mother pigeon stirs. Her breast is warm against the smooth curve of her egg, her heartbeat a steady, hushed drum that fills the tiny world beneath her. She shifts her weight slightly, turning the egg with practiced care so that warmth touches every side. The shell is cool where her feathers have lifted, but only for a moment. Soon it is cradled in heat again, and the faint stirrings inside quiet once more. Around her, the canopy is an immense cathedral of living wood. Oak limbs twist like the arms of ancient guardians. Beech leaves tremble in the first breeze, and the air smells of damp bark and the ghost of last night's rain. The forest's voice is gentle this morning. No roaring wind, no pounding rain, only the whisper of leaves and the occasional drip of water falling from leaf tip to leaf litter far below. Somewhere in that green distance, a wood thrush sings, its flute-like call curling upward, rising through the layered air like incense in a place of worship. The mother pigeon's mate returns, wings whispering as he lands on a nearby branch. He carries food in his crop, softened grains and seeds gathered at first light, and offers it with a low, throaty coo. She eats lightly, her eyes never leaving the egg for long. His presence is a balm, his quiet vigilance an unspoken vow. When she rises to stretch, he steps forward, settles over the egg, and tucks his head in the same careful angle she used. The gesture so precise it feels like a shared heartbeat between them. Beneath that pale shell, a change is beginning. The chick inside pushes faintly, its movement no more than a flutter, but it is the first echo of a lifetime of flight. The thin world around it has grown tight, confining. The muffled pulse of its parents, the steady rhythm of warmth and coolness, has been its whole existence until now. But now there is a tapping, a faint scraping from within, matched by an ancient urgency written in the marrow of its bones. Outside, the forest breathes with the dawn. Shafts of sunlight pierce the canopy in golden columns, illuminating floating motes of dust and pollen. Ants traverse a patch of rough bark, their tiny legs finding grooves older than the flock itself. Far below, a deer moves silently between the trees, the delicate crack of twigs underfoot almost masked by the murmur of the nearby stream. Above, the sky is pale as a pearl, and the wind smells of green things growing. The egg trembles. The father lifts his head, sensing it, though he does not move from his place. There is patience in him, the knowledge that hatching is a slow ritual, a sacred unbinding. Again, a faint crack. The shell's surface is scored by a hairline fracture, so fine it could be mistaken for a thread. The chick rests after the effort, breathing in the thin air within, its small body pressed against the curved wall that has been both cradle and boundary. Hours pass this way, effort, rest, until at last a larger piece of shell falls away, and the new one's head emerges into a world drenched in light. The first breath is slow, shuddering. The air smells different than anything in the egg, cooler, richer, touched by the scent of leaves and the faint musk of feathers. Blinking against the brightness, the chick sees only a blur. A breast warm with soft plumage, the curve of a beak, the shadow of wings. The father leans close, touching the tip of his beak to the damp crown of his offspring's head. The gesture is both recognition and welcome. When the mother returns, her coo is low and rolling, the sound curling around the nest like smoke. She slides into place beside the hatchling, her wing arching over it, and the new one folds into her warmth without hesitation. The forest continues its day around them, untroubled and infinite. Squirrels chase along the lattice of branches, scattering bits of bark. The wind swells now and again, making the whole tree sway in slow, gentle arcs, as if rocking the nest on purpose. Sunlight shifts across the leaves, dappling the downy head of the chick. For days, the chick will know only this high green world. The smell of moss, the creak of the branch in the wind, the sound of wings departing and returning. It will grow on the warmth of its parents' bodies and the soft food they bring, its feathers still a promise beneath the pale skin. It will learn the language of coos and murmurs, the meaning of a raised wing, the comfort of a shadow cast by someone who will always return. Beyond the nest, the great flock moves and shifts, never far, always near enough that their distant murmuring feels like the beat of a giant heart. At night, the voices settle into a low, constant hum, lulling the chick into sleep. In dreams, if such things exist for something so new, it might imagine the wind that one day will lift it, the endless green waves of treetops, the silver ribbon of a river catching the sun. But that is far away still. For now, the canopy is the whole world, and under its soft, shifting roof, the little one breathes, listens, and grows, safe in the knowing that the sky waits above, and the wings that will carry it there are already forming in silence. And somewhere, deep inside, the pull toward the great river of the flock stirs, quiet but steady, as if the heartbeat of every pigeon in the sky were already whispering its name. The days lengthen, and the young pigeon's world begins to expand beyond the circle of the nest. Once, the canopy was an endless ceiling, a green dome with only hints of the sky beyond. Now, small gaps between leaves become doorways to something greater. Glimpses of shifting light, vast and pale by morning, deepening to bronze at dusk. The fledgling's feathers have grown sleek, blue-gray along the back, with a warm blush across the breast. Where once its down barely caught the breeze, now the growing flight feathers tremble when the wind moves through the branches, as though remembering the wings they will soon command. The parents still return often, their wings whispering just before they appear. They bring seeds and berries, each offering pressed gently into the fledgling's eager beak. But between these feedings they leave for longer stretches, rejoining the greater flock to feed and scout. The young one begins to feel these absences like a tide, out and then in again, each return a reassurance that the vast beyond is still friendly, still connected to the safety of this high perch. One morning, after the light has shifted from gold to the clear silver of late spring, the mother calls from a branch just beyond the nest. Her eyes glint in the dappled sun, and she lowers her body in a subtle invitation. The young pigeon hesitates. The wind is fresh this morning, curling around the tree with a cool promise. The branch sways gently, and the distance between the nest and that other branch is only a body's length, yet it feels like the width of a river. The first leap is clumsy. Wings beat too quickly, then too wide, and the landing is a stumble that nearly sends the fledgling tumbling to the leaves below. But the mother steadies it with a nudge, her coo soft as moss. There will be many such hops in the days to come, short, uncertain flights from branch to branch, each one gaining a little more balance, a little more trust in the air's invisible hands. The fledgling learns quickly that the air is both emptiness and cradle. Sometimes it catches you gently, lifting your chest as you glide. Other times it falls away too soon, leaving the earth to rush upward. The trick is to listen, not just with ears but with the whole body, to the way it shifts and swirls, to feel when it wants to hold you and when it lets you fall. By the time summer crowns the forest in its richest green, the young pigeon is ready to follow its parents beyond the familiar branches. The first journey is cautious, the forest floor far below flashing with patches of sun and shadow. The smell of wildflowers drifts up from a meadow's edge, and the sound of the river hums faintly through the trees. The flock is not yet gathered in its fullness here, only a few dozen birds wheeling and settling, but the fledgling feels the pull of their motion, the way they move, as though answering a single thought. And then comes the day when the sky opens entirely. The family takes flight together at dawn, rising above the treetops until the horizon rolls out in every direction. Green hills, silver rivers, and the pale shimmer of distant wetlands. But it is the air itself that transforms the fledgling. The way it stretches beyond sight, the way it seems to bend under the weight of the flock's shadow, the way it hums against the feathers as if singing a welcome. There are hundreds of them now, moving together in a vast, shimmering ribbon. The fledgling flies near its mother at first, matching her wing beat for wing beat, but soon begins to weave slightly, testing its own rhythm. The air is warm near the ground but cool above, and every shift in altitude brings new scents: pine resin, wild mint, the mineral tang of river water. Below, deer scatter from the shadow of so many wings. Above, the sun slides between clouds, painting the flock in fleeting gold. Hour after hour they move, the rhythm of flight settling into the bones. The fledgling begins to understand the strange magic of the flock, how no one leads, yet all turn together, how there is room for thousands, yet each bird's path is its own, how the sound of their passing is not noise, but a living tide that fills the air with something older than words. They rest in great groves at midday, the branches sagging under the weight of so many bodies. Here, the fledgling learns the other half of flight, the stillness between journeys. Feathers are preened, crops are filled with berries and seeds, and eyes half close as the afternoon hums with cicadas. But the stillness is never complete. The rustle of shifting wings, the occasional startled rise and resettle, all remind the young one that the sky is never far away. As summer deepens, the journeys grow longer. The fledgling's wings strengthen, carrying it farther before fatigue sets in. It learns to glide between bursts of flapping, to angle itself so the wind does part of the work. There are days when the flock flies so high the world below seems only a painted map. Rivers thin as silver threads, forests like a dark quilt, meadows splashed in gold and white. There are days when they fly low, skimming the tops of grasses that ripple like a green sea. The fledgling's breast fills with a strange, swelling joy in these moments. Flight is not just movement, it is belonging. It is the invisible thread that ties each bird to every other, weaving the many into one. The flock is not only a way of living, it is a way of being. And yet, as dusk falls and the flock settles once more into a chosen grove, the fledgling still remembers the nest, the feel of the canopy folding around it. Now, that memory is joined by something larger, the vision of a sky without edges, a sky that calls not just today but every day to come. Tomorrow they will rise again. Tomorrow the horizon will open like a book, and the story of the skies will continue, page after page, wing after wing. The fledgling, no longer new to the air but still young enough to marvel at it, will follow wherever the river of wings flows. For in this vast breathing world, the sky has no end. The season turns softly, almost without notice, yet the flock feels it in the air long before the leaves begin to change. A subtle deepening of scent rides the wind, a heavier sweetness, earthy and rich, the promise of food in abundance. The sun's light, too, grows warmer in tone, spilling gold instead of silver, brushing every wing with a faint glow. Somewhere, in the great woven memory of the pigeons, the signal is clear. The feast is beginning. They travel now with greater purpose, not the idle drifting of summer but a weaving path guided by the ripening of the land. From one grove to another they go, as if following invisible threads that bind the trees together. The air itself is thick with aroma, the bitter oil of walnuts breaking their green husks, the sweet starch of cornfields at the edge of forest, the nutty perfume of acorns scattered like coins across the ground. Every scent pulls them onward, guiding their flight as surely as rivers guide the salmon. The flock descends into a vast stand of oak so old the trunks are wide as small cottages, the bark etched with centuries of wind and rain. Here the canopy is high and bright, the leaves beginning their slow shift to amber. The ground below is littered with acorns, fat, glossy, and plentiful. The pigeons land in great spirals, their wings sounding like soft surf breaking against a distant shore. They scatter across the forest floor, quick and graceful, each bird plucking up the choicest morsels before lifting away to the branches to swallow in safety. The young pigeon, no longer a fledgling but still new to the patterns of the seasons, follows the example of its elders. It learns to spot the fullest acorns, to strip the bitter hulls from beech nuts, to find the ripest berries hiding in shadow. It discovers the pleasure of gorging on abundance, of feeling the crop heavy and warm, a storehouse for the flight ahead. Between feedings, it rests on a sunlit branch, the dappled light painting its breast in shifting patterns. The feast is not only of the forest's bounty, but of its sounds and colors. Jays scold from high perches, their voices sharp as snapped twigs. Squirrels chatter and leap from branch to branch, tails twitching in irritation at the flood of feathered guests. Woodpeckers drum on hollow trunks, their staccato rhythms blending with the low cooing that ripples through the flock. Overhead, the sky is a deep, unbroken blue, and the air carries the crisp edge of the coming autumn. Day by day, they move from grove to grove, following the ripening. One morning, it is hickory nuts in a grove near a slow-moving creek. Another, a meadow heavy with wild grapes, the purple skins splitting under their own weight. The young pigeon learns the taste of each, how the grapes burst with sharp sweetness, how the hickory nuts give a faint smoky tang, how the beech seeds carry a buttery richness. In the evenings, the flock roosts in dense thickets where the ground rises into low ridges. From these heights, the young pigeon can see the world beyond the forest, the glimmer of rivers winding through the land, the dark swell of other woodlands far away, and in the distance the shimmer of open fields touched by sunset. The air cools quickly after dark, carrying the smell of damp leaves and wood smoke from far beyond the trees. The pigeons settle shoulder to shoulder, their bodies a living quilt of warmth against the chill. By mid-season, the forest's generosity reaches its height. The ground is almost hidden beneath acorns, beech nuts, and the fallen fruit of wild apple trees. Even the smallest streams run thick with leaf fall, the water curling around red and gold like a painter's brush swirling in color. The flock feeds until their crops are full to bursting, resting only long enough to let the food settle before taking to the air again. The young pigeon, stronger now, can spend hours flying between feeding sites without tiring, the sky a familiar and trusted home. One day, they come upon a grove where chestnut trees stand like sentinels, their spiked fruits splitting to reveal the pale treasures inside. The smell here is intoxicating, sweet and nutty, with the faint warmth of sun-baked shells. The pigeons descend in waves, shaking the branches until the chestnuts fall like soft rain. The young pigeon learns the trick of prying open the spiny husks with beak and claw, careful to avoid the sharp points. The taste is unlike any other, mild, creamy, a flavor that lingers as they rise again into the late afternoon light. The days shorten, but the feast does not yet wane. The forest seems endless in its offerings, and the flock moves as if carried on the breath of the season itself. Each landing is a rustle of leaves and wings. Each takeoff, a slow eruption of movement that sends shadows sliding across the forest floor. The young pigeon feels the rhythm settle into its bones, find, feed, fly, rest, always together, always moving toward the next place where the land bends under its own generosity. And always the horizon calls. Even in the fullness of the feast, there is an unspoken knowing among them that this is not forever. The trees will soon stand bare, the rivers will still, the wind will sharpen into winter's edge. But for now, the world is heavy with food, and the flock moves like a single great body through it, the air alive with the whisper and pulse of countless wings. Tomorrow, they will follow the scent of walnuts carried on the wind from a distant valley. The young pigeon will rise again into the wide, bright sky, its crop full, its heart steady in the rhythm of the flock. And somewhere ahead, the season will open into something new, another page in the endless story of the skies. The morning sky opens wide like a vast, breathing canvas, soft pastel hues deepening with each passing moment. The flock awakens with the slow, gentle stir of wings unfurling, the delicate shimmer of feathers catching the first golden light. The young pigeon, now more sure and steady in flight, rises with the swell of thousands, carried not just by wind but by something older, a rhythm that pulses through the air like the heartbeat of the earth itself. From the treetops they ascend, leaving the shelter of the forest in a slow, spiraling dance. Below, the patchwork of fields, rivers, and woods unfolds like a quilt stitched by time. The flock stretches wide across the horizon, a living, shifting river of wings that moves with grace and unity, flowing where the wind leads. It is a sight so immense and hypnotic that the world itself seems to hold its breath in awe. This river is never still. It bends and twists with the seasons, carrying life from one place to another. The young pigeon learns to read the subtle currents, feeling the way the air thickens and thins, guiding her on a journey without maps or signposts. Each beat of a wing is a conversation, a pulse that joins countless others, weaving the many into a single, soaring body. The days blend into one another as the flock follows the invisible paths etched into memory. They glide over meadows heavy with wildflowers, where butterflies drift like petals in a gentle stream. They pass over wide rivers that sparkle like molten silver, their banks lined with willows that dip their branches into the cool, flowing water. Below, fish flick their scales in the sunlight, and dragonflies dart in flashes of iridescence. The young pigeon rides these currents with a growing confidence, her wings slicing the air with effortless grace. She feels the power of the sky beneath her feathers, the lift that carries her over valleys and hills, the rush that speeds her forward like a whispered secret. Yet she also knows the calm that follows, the soft glide where the world falls away, and she floats in a quiet, endless space. Within the flock, there is a deep sense of connection. No bird is lost, no voice unheard. They shift as one when a hawk appears, a sudden shadow flitting across the sunlight, and settle once more when the threat passes. The river of wings is a sanctuary, a moving shelter against the vastness below. At midday, the flock descends into a great forest clearing, where acorns carpet the ground like scattered jewels. The birds settle, their bodies rustling leaves and stirring the earth. The young pigeon joins in the feast, savoring the rich, nutty flavors that seem to hold the warmth of the sun itself. Between bites, she lifts her head to listen, the soft coos and murmurs weaving through the branches like a song only they know. As the afternoon fades, the flock takes to the air once more, rising toward the horizon where the sky meets the earth in a hazy blur. They fly low over a shimmering river, its surface broken by leaping fish and dipping birds. The young pigeon marvels at the dance below, a world teeming with life and motion, yet held in delicate balance. Evening draws near, and the flock seeks a roosting grove where the trees stand close and tall, their leaves whispering in the cooling breeze. Settling among the branches, the young pigeon feels the day's journey settle into her bones, a gentle ache softened by the rhythm of shared warmth. The flock's coos mingle with the rustle of leaves and the distant call of night birds, weaving a lullaby that wraps the forest in peace. In the quiet moments before sleep, the young pigeon dreams of endless skies and flowing rivers, of wings beating in unison beneath a boundless sun. She knows that tomorrow will bring new journeys, new places to explore, and the river of wings will carry her onward, forever part of a living sky. And so, beneath a tapestry of stars, the forest holds its breath once more, waiting for the dawn when the river will rise again, endless and free. The sky remains vast, but a subtle shift has begun, soft as a sigh, yet impossible to ignore. The wind carries a different scent now, mingled with the rich, sweet smells of ripening fruit and damp earth, but also touched by something faintly metallic, something new. The great river of wings moves with less ease than before, the flock smaller, its rhythm slower, as if feeling the gentle tremors of a land changing beneath their feet and feathers. The young pigeon senses the difference deep within, a quiet stirring in the marrow that mirrors the rustle of the forest. Trees stand taller and straighter, but here and there the undergrowth thins, the grass less lush, and in the distance patches of bare earth where once there was green. The forest is whispering its secrets, and the flock listens in the silence between wing beats. In the mornings, the pigeons still rise as one, their wings painting soft arcs against the dawn. Yet the great gatherings have begun to scatter, smaller groups taking different paths where once all flowed together like a single breath. The young pigeon notices how some familiar trees bear fewer acorns, their branches lighter, as if holding back. The taste of the feast is less sweet, the air less warm. Hunters appear on the edges of the land, their presence like a distant rumble on the horizon, unseen but felt. Fires burn in small clearings, smoke curling slowly into the sky, a quiet warning woven into the forest's breath. The pigeons watch from above, wary but unable to understand the full weight of this new shadow. Their flight patterns adjust subtly, avoiding places where the wind carries the scent of smoke and human footsteps. Despite these changes, the flock moves with resilience, driven by memory and the pull of the seasons. The young pigeon grows stronger, her wings more sure, her heart steady even as the world shifts beneath her. She learns to fly higher, to ride different currents, to trust the flock when it parts suddenly or swerves sharply. The dance of survival is delicate, a balance between grace and caution. At times, the forest seems to hold its breath alongside the pigeons. Leaves fall earlier, frost lingers longer on the ground, and the songs of other birds grow quieter. The young pigeon watches the slow fading of summer, feeling the bittersweet melancholy of a world preparing to sleep. The shadows lengthen, stretching across the trees like soft fingers, and the air chills with the promise of cold days ahead. Yet, even as the land whispers of change, the flock's song endures, a gentle, persistent murmur that threads through the fading light. It is a song of belonging, of journeys taken and those yet to come, of wings beating in rhythm with the heartbeat of the earth. The young pigeon carries this song within her, a flicker of light in the growing dusk. In the quiet moments before dusk, when the sky glows with the last warmth of day, the flock gathers once more in the thinning light. Perched among the trees, the young pigeon feels the weight of the shifting world, but also the steady pulse of life that refuses to wane. The wind hums softly through the branches, a lullaby for the forest and all who call it home. As night falls, stars begin to pierce the darkening sky, ancient and constant. The young pigeon closes her eyes, letting the murmurs of the flock and the whispering wind carry her into sleep. Tomorrow the journey will continue, uncertain but ever onward, beneath skies that remember and forests that dream. And somewhere beyond the horizon the world waits, ready to tell its next story, carried on the wings of those who still fly. The dawn breaks slowly, painted in soft shades of rose and amber that spill like warm breath over the sleeping forest. But beneath this, gentle light, a new tension rides the air, an unseen edge threading through the familiar scent of pine and earth. Far away, on the horizon where sky meets land, thin curls of smoke rise like ghostly fingers, their quiet climb into the blue sky a whisper of change that cannot be ignored. The flock stirs uneasily, Wings that once caught the morning breeze with carefree grace now beat with a cautious rhythm. The young pigeon feels it deep in her bones, a stirring of unease, a sense that the land beneath their wings is no longer quite the sanctuary it once was. From above, the forest stretches endlessly, but where once it was whole and breathing, now patches of clearing and charred trunks scar the edges like fading scars. Hunters move with quiet steps through the thinning woods, their fires flickering against the dawn like the pulse of a slow, relentless drum. The smoke carries on the wind, trailing like a shadow behind the flock's path. The pigeons respond with an instinct older than memory, an urgent weaving of flight paths, a scattering of wings, a delicate dance to evade unseen danger. The young pigeon watches as the great gatherings become smaller, the once vast rivers of wings now fracturing into scattered streams. Yet still, the flock presses on, driven by the deep current of seasons and the stubborn pulse of life. The air is heavy with the scent of wood smoke and earth, the forest's voice a soft, mournful song beneath the clamor of wings. Flight takes on a new rhythm, sharp rises and quick dives to avoid the smoke's creeping reach, longer pauses between feeding as the land's bounty grows scarce. The forest that once sang with abundance now hums a quieter tune. Acorns fall in fewer numbers, berry bushes bear fewer fruits. The young pigeon learns to fly farther, to stretch her wings beyond the familiar groves, searching for sustenance in a world that seems to be shrinking beneath the weight of human presence. At dusk, the flock seeks refuge in the tallest oaks that still stand unbroken, their branches heavy with tired wings. The trees creak and groan under the burden, but they hold, silent sentinels amid the shifting landscape. Below, the fires burn on, faint glows flickering through the dark, a reminder that the world is changing faster than the sky can shift. In the quiet between heartbeats, the young pigeon feels a bittersweet ache, a longing for the boundless skies of earlier days, for the endless green waves of the forest, for the safety of the vast river of wings now thinning before her eyes. Yet there is also a flicker of resolve, a stubborn spark that keeps the flock moving forward, searching, surviving. The night settles slowly, folding the forest in shadows and the soft murmur of distant flames. Stars emerge like scattered embers, ancient and unchanging, bearing silent witness to the unfolding story. The young pigeon tucks her head beneath her wing, the rhythm of the flock's breathing a steady pulse in the dark. Tomorrow will come, uncertain but inevitable, and with it the wind will carry new tales of smoke and shadow, of blight and fading light, of a world caught between memory and loss. But for now, beneath the vast and quiet sky the story holds, fragile and fierce, whispered on wings that refuse to fall silent. The morning dawns pale and quiet, but beneath its gentle light, a new unease weaves through the forest air, a presence both strange and unsettling. The flock rises from the trees, their wings stirring the stillness, but today their flight is shadowed by uncertainty. From branches once safe and familiar hang strange, woven traps, nets that tremble faintly in the soft breeze, their threads glistening like spider silk in the dawn. The young pigeon glides among the trees, eyes sharp and wary. These nets, unnatural and silent, sway with a quiet menace. Some of the flock have already fallen, caught in the delicate meshes, their cries muffled by the hush of the woods. The air tastes different here, thicker, charged with fear and caution. The great river of wings has fractured further, the flock scattering into smaller, more cautious groups that dart like fleeting shadows between trees. Where once the forest was a place of abundant feasts and endless skies, now it holds hidden dangers. The young pigeon learns to fly with new care, skimming higher above the tangled underbrush, listening for the faintest rustle that might signal a trap. The scent of smoke still lingers faintly on the wind, mingling with the scent of pine and damp earth, a reminder that the forest is no longer untouched. Despite the threat, the flock still moves with an ancient grace, a whispered dance of survival. They navigate the netted groves with a cautious rhythm, wings beating in whispered urgency, bodies weaving through gaps with practiced ease. The young pigeon feels the weight of every narrow escape, every frantic flutter that avoids the silent snares. Each flight becomes a lesson in vigilance, every landing a test of trust in the shifting forest. Food grows scarce in places where nets hang heavy, the forest's generosity fading like a memory. The young pigeon finds herself stretching farther than ever before, following the call of hidden groves and distant meadows. The taste of acorns and berries is less sweet now, tinged with the quiet loss of a world shrinking beneath the shadow of human hands. At dusk, the flock gathers once more in the deep hollows where trees still stand tall and proud. The air is thick with the soft murmur of wings settling, but also with a fragile hope, a determination to endure, to fly, to remember. The young pigeon nestles close to the worn branches, her heart beating in time with the gentle coos that ripple through the dark. Outside, the night deepens, and the forest holds its breath. The nets sway softly in the wind, silent witnesses to a changing world. Stars pierce the sky like distant lanterns, casting pale light on a flock caught between fading past and uncertain future. The young pigeon closes her eyes, carried on the steady rhythm of wings and the whispered promise of dawn. Tomorrow, the flight will continue, delicate, determined, and alive with the echoes of a world that still remembers how to soar. The sky, once a vast and endless sea of wings, now feels strangely hollow, a great expanse too wide and too quiet. The young pigeon rises early, her feathers catching the soft blush of dawn, but the air is lighter, emptier than it once was. The great rivers of flight have thinned to trickling streams, the dense clouds of feathers reduced to solitary figures tracing silent arcs against the pale morning. Beneath her wings, the land stretches wide and changing. Forests bear the marks of countless feet and fires, openings where once trees stood thick and shadows deep. The songs of other birds have faded, replaced by a lonely whisper that seems to drift in the stillness like a forgotten breath. The young pigeon moves through this quiet world with a cautious grace, feeling the weight of absence in every silent grove, every empty branch. The days grow cooler now, edged with the crispness of early autumn. Leaves turn gold and russet, falling in slow, rustling waves that carpet the forest floor. The young pigeon watches them spiral down like fading memories, soft and inevitable. The air carries the scent of drying grass and wood smoke, the faint trace of distant fires lingering like a warning. Food becomes scarce in this altered land. Acorns are fewer, berries hidden beneath brittle branches, and the once abundant feast feels like a whispered promise fading on the wind. The young pigeon learns to fly farther, to seek out the smallest bounty, the tiniest glimmer of life that clings to the edges of the forest. Her wings grow stronger, her heart steadier, but the ache of solitude deepens with each passing day. The flock no longer moves as a single, breathing body. Instead, small clusters scatter like lost shadows, their flights brief and cautious. Where once they soared together in great symphonies of movement, now their coos are soft and hesitant, echoing across empty skies. The young pigeon clings to these fragile bonds, each shared moment a balm against the growing loneliness. At twilight, she perches on a lone branch, overlooking a clearing where the grass shivers in the cool breeze. The horizon glows faintly with the last light of day, and the sky is a tapestry of soft purples and blues. Stars begin to pierce the darkness, distant and steady, timeless witnesses to the unfolding story. The young pigeon gazes upward, feeling the vastness of the lonely sky fold around her like a silent embrace. In the quiet, she remembers the fullness of flight, the rush of wings beating in unison, the wild river of feathers that once filled the horizon. That memory is a fragile flame, flickering but unextinguished, a quiet promise whispered on the wind. Night deepens, and the forest settles into a hush. The young pigeon tucks her head beneath her wing, carried on the soft rhythm of fading wings and distant stars. Tomorrow she will rise again, alone but unbroken, tracing her path beneath a sky that remembers even when the earth forgets. The forest breathes a fragile breath beneath the fading light, its ancient trees standing as weary witnesses to a story nearing its close. Tonight, the flock gathers one last time in a great, solemn assembly, a roost so vast it bends the branches like a wave frozen in time. The young pigeon, now seasoned by countless flights and shifting skies, finds her place among them, the weight of countless wings pressing close, the sound of soft coos rising like a whispered hymn into the cool evening air. This gathering is unlike any before. There is a quiet reverence in the way the birds settle, a knowing held deep in the bones and feathers. The great river of wings has narrowed to a slow, steady current, fewer voices joining the song. Yet still, the sky holds them, an endless dome beneath which they come together one final time. The air is thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, mingled with the faintest trace of smoke, a reminder of the changing world beyond these branches. The young pigeon listens to the chorus of voices, each one a thread in a tapestry woven through generations. It is a sound both joyful and mournful, a farewell and a celebration wrapped in the soft folds of night. The flock stretches wide across the treetops, a living canopy whose shadows ripple with the movement of restless wings. Among them, the young pigeon feels the steady beat of hearts synchronized in quiet communion, a rhythm older than memory. The forest itself seems to lean in, the leaves trembling with a gentle applause that echoes in the stillness. Night deepens and stars wheel slowly overhead, casting silver light that filters through branches and settles on the sleeping birds like a benediction. The young pigeon closes her eyes, feeling the weight of this moment, the fullness of flight, the gathering of lives intertwined, the final embrace of a world slipping softly into silence. And though the morning will come, and with it a sky more empty than before, this last great roost holds the promise of memory. A song carried on the wind, a breath held in the heart of the forest, an echo of wings that once filled the sky. The night stretches on, vast and unending, and beneath it the flock rests, together, still and forever part of the endless sky. Dawn rises gently over the last great roost, spilling pale gold into the cool mist that drapes the forest. The air is still, as though the world itself hesitates before the flock takes wing. The young pigeon wakes slowly, feeling the soft warmth of feathers pressed close on either side, the steady rhythm of breathing all around her. For a long moment she remains still, listening to the murmur of the wind through pine needles, the faint rustle of leaves, the low, rolling coos that carry the heartbeat of the flock. When the first shaft of sunlight pierces the canopy, the air stirs. One by one, the pigeons rise, their wings catching the light like sparks floating upward. The young pigeon follows, her wings stretching into the chill morning, lifting her into the soft embrace of the sky. Beneath her, the roost falls away, a patchwork of green and gold fading into the distance as the flock gathers into a loose, flowing current. This is not the rushing river of wings that once thundered across the horizon. The air between each bird is wide now, the song of their flight quieter, more fragile. Yet there is purpose in their movement, a steady, unbroken thread pulling them onward. They fly over valleys bathed in the pale light of morning, over rivers that glint like molten glass, over meadows where frost clings to each blade of grass like a scattering of stars. The young pigeon senses that this journey is different. The air carries no promise of return, no familiar scent of a known destination. Instead, it feels like the turning of a page, the quiet close of a chapter in the great book of the sky. Still, she flies on, driven by the same ancient pull that has guided her kind for countless seasons. They travel for hours without rest, riding the currents high above the land. Below, the forest thins, giving way to wide stretches of open ground where trees stand far apart, like solitary guardians of a forgotten time. In the distance, faint trails of smoke rise once again, curling into the cold air. The flock veers away, the turn so instinctive that no signal is needed, just a shared knowing. A wordless agreement carried in the beating of wings. By midday, the sun is high, and the wind has shifted, carrying the scent of dry leaves and distant rain. The young pigeon keeps close to the others, her eyes searching the land for places to rest. They find a grove along a winding stream, its banks soft with moss, the water dark and slow-moving under a canopy of bare branches. Here, they pause to drink, their reflections rippling across the surface before dissolving into the current. The rest is brief. The pull of the journey is stronger than hunger or weariness. Soon they rise again, their shadows sliding silently over the hills and hollows below. The afternoon light grows warmer, gilding the edges of the world, and the flock's path tilts toward the sinking sun. As the day fades, the horizon blooms with the deep rose and amber of evening. The flock flies on, silhouetted against a sky that seems impossibly wide. The young pigeon feels the weight of the distance they have traveled, the ache in her wings, the steady thrum of her heart keeping time with the wing beats around her. She knows that each mile carries them farther from what was, deeper into the unknown. When at last the sun slips below the edge of the world, the flock finds a stand of ancient oaks to rest in for the night. The branches are thick and strong, though fewer now than in the forests of memory. The young pigeon settles in close to her companions, the cool wind threading through the leaves. Above, the first stars appear, scattered like quiet promises across the darkening sky. Tomorrow they will rise again. And though the path ahead is uncertain, the journey will continue, carried by the memory of countless wings, by the pull of a sky that still remembers the fullness of their flight. Morning arrives quietly, its pale light spilling through a thin veil of mist that clings to the ancient oaks where the flock has roosted through the night. The air is cool and still, heavy with the scent of damp leaves and slow-moving water. The young pigeon wakes to the soft rustle of wings, but the sound is sparse now, only a scattering of movements like the faint breath of wind through tall grass. Where once the roost was a living canopy of thousands, it is now a patchwork of small gatherings, each bird shifting closer to the others as though seeking warmth from the closeness alone. They lift into the sky without fanfare, their departure a quiet rising rather than the thunderous wave of old. The young pigeon feels the difference not only in sound but in the air itself. How open it feels, how the empty spaces between wings seem to stretch longer than they should. Below, the forest glides past in shades of gold and gray, its autumn leaves falling in slow spirals, returning to the soil in silent surrender. The journey is gentle but unhurried, the flock moving more like drifting leaves than the surging river of their youth. There is no urgency now, no long push toward a far-off destination. Instead, their flight feels like the slow winding down of a song, a melody still beautiful, but fading toward silence. The young pigeon keeps pace with the others, her wings finding the rhythm without thought, yet her heart feels the quiet weight of the change. They pause often now, resting in small clearings where the sun filters softly through thinning branches. Food is found in scattered places, clusters of berries clinging stubbornly to bare vines, a few acorns lying hidden beneath crisp leaves, seeds tucked in the creases of grass bent by frost. The young pigeon eats slowly, savoring each bite, aware in some unspoken way that these moments will not stretch endlessly into the seasons ahead. The afternoons are warm in the sun, but shadows grow longer earlier each day. By evening, the air cools quickly, and the flock gathers close in the highest branches they can find. The young pigeon perches near the center, shielded from the wind by the bodies of her companions. She listens to their low coos, a sound not of abundance and chatter now, but of comfort, a shared murmur to remind each other they are still here, still together. On one such evening, the wind shifts suddenly, bringing with it the faintest smell of smoke, far off but unmistakable. Heads lift, wings shift, but no alarm spreads. They have learned, over the seasons, that the world beyond their wings will not always bend for them. Instead, they remain still, the quiet settling back over them like a blanket as the stars emerge one by one. In the days that follow, the young pigeon notices that the flock does not range as far. The wide arcs of their journeys have tightened into smaller circles, the sky they claim growing smaller with each passing week. There's a tenderness in their movements now, a gentler banking in the air, a slower descent into the trees. The great distances are no longer necessary. What they seek is near, and what is near is enough. Yet, even in this quiet contraction, the beauty of the world remains. There are mornings when the frost clings to every twig and blade of grass, turning the forest into a cathedral of glass. The young pigeon drifts through it with wings outstretched, the cold air sharp and pure, the sunlight scattering into 1,000 tiny fires on the frozen leaves. In these moments, she feels the truth of her life as deeply as ever, not in the vastness of the sky, but in the small, perfect details of the earth below. As the season leans further toward winter, the flock grows even smaller. Some mornings only a handful rise together into the pale dawn, their shadows crossing the frost-white ground like fragile threads. But they still move, still find the places where food hides, still return to the high branches when night comes. There is no fight against the turning of the world, only a quiet yielding, a graceful bowing to the rhythm that has always guided them. One evening, as the sun sinks behind the bare horizon, the young pigeon settles beside her closest companion. They have flown together since her first uncertain leaps into the air, and their wings have carved the same paths through countless skies. She feels the warmth of his body against hers, hears the steady beat of his breathing, and knows that for all that has faded, something remains unbroken. Above them, the stars spill across the night in their endless, patient watch. The forest sleeps beneath, the air cool and still. The young pigeon closes her eyes, letting the memory of countless flights drift through her mind. The rush of wings in the river of the sky, the scent of ripened walnuts on the wind, the feel of sunlight warming her feathers. These are hers to keep, as long as she flies, as long as she breathes. And tomorrow she will rise again, slower, perhaps, and in a smaller circle than before, but still rising, still moving through the sky that has always been her home. The morning comes thin and gray, the light reluctant to spill across the quiet forest. Frost edges the fallen leaves, their curled shapes holding the memory of autumn, even as winter breathes across the land. The young pigeon wakes alone in the high limbs of a bare oak. The branch beneath her is wide and strong, but it feels different without the warmth of other bodies pressed close. The familiar murmur of many voices has faded to silence. Only the wind moves here now, whispering through the empty lattice of twigs. She lifts her head, scanning the pale horizon for the shapes of others. Sometimes, in the past weeks, she has seen one or two, far off, their paths crossing for only a moment before the distance widens again. Today, there is no movement in the sky, only the slow drift of a lone cloud and the faint trace of smoke from somewhere beyond the tree line. The young pigeon stretches her wings and takes to the air, her body rising into the cold with an effort that feels heavier than before. The world below is quiet, the rivers moving slowly beneath a thin glaze of ice, the meadows lying flat and brittle under winter's breath. Every beat of her wings is met by air that feels emptier, more hollow, as if even the sky is thinning. She follows the path of a narrow stream, its edges white with frost, until she comes to a grove where she once fed among hundreds. The ground is bare now, save for a scattering of husks and the shadowed shapes of fallen branches. She lands and searches, finding a few shriveled berries clinging stubbornly to a low vine. Their sweetness faded, but enough to fill her crop for now. When she lifts her head again, the wind stirs, and something drifts downward through the cold air. At first, she thinks it is a leaf, light, tumbling, caught in the invisible hands of the breeze, but as it nears, she sees it for what it is, a feather. It is soft gray, tinged faintly with rose at the tip, and it twists lazily as it falls, coming to rest against a patch of frost on the forest floor. She hops closer, the small, fragile thing lying still before her. It carries the scent of the sky and the faint trace of another pigeon she does not know. For a moment, she stands over it, her chest rising and falling, the memory of the great river of wings rushing through her mind. She remembers the roar of countless feathers moving as one, the shadow they cast over the land, the way the air once thrummed with life. This single feather feels like all of it at once. Everything that was, everything that is gone. The wind lifts again, and the feather shifts, catching a stray beam of sunlight that filters through the bare branches. Its edges glow, the delicate barbs illuminated for the briefest moment before the light fades. She picks it up gently in her beak, holding it for a while before letting it go. The breeze carries it upward for a heartbeat, then away into the pale distance, until it disappears into the horizon. She takes to the air again, her wings cutting through the stillness. The feather is gone, but its image lingers in her mind, bright and unwavering. She does not know how many more days the sky will hold her, or whether she will meet another of her kind again, but she knows she will keep flying, for the memory of those who once filled the air beside her, for the rhythm of the wind in her feathers, for the sky that still opens wide each morning. The day drifts into evening, the light softening to gold, then deepening to violet. She finds her rest in a lone pine, its needles whispering gently in the cool air. Above her, the first stars blink into being, distant and patient. The forest is quiet, the world vast and still, and in that stillness she dreams, not of what has been lost, but of what remains. The curve of the river in sunlight, the scent of rain on warm leaves, the endless, welcoming reach of the sky. Somewhere, high and far, a single feather drifts on the wind, carrying with it the memory of a world once alive with wings. Tomorrow she will rise again, but tonight she rests in the gentle hush between heartbeats, her dreams lit by the memory of flight. The sky is pale at dawn, the horizon brushed with the softest colors, rose, pearl, and the faintest gold, like the first strokes of a painter's hand. The young pigeon wakes in the high pine where she roosted through the night. The cold air moves gently over her feathers, carrying the quiet breath of the sleeping forest. She lingers a while before taking flight, letting the slow warmth of the sun's climb seep into her bones. When at last she rises, the world opens beneath her wings. She glides over the frost-touched meadow, the silver ribbon of the stream, the dark green crowns of pines that hold their color against the winter. The air is still. There is no rush now, no great river of wings to match her pace. Yet, in every shadow, every current of wind, she feels something that was never truly lost. As she flies, she passes places that still hold the memory of her kind. An ancient oak stands in a quiet grove, its branches stretching wide, as though remembering the weight of countless pigeons resting in its arms. The bark is grooved and scarred, but its heartwood still pulses with life. In a meadow beyond, wild grapevines twist through the hedgerows, their roots sunk deep into the same soil that once fed thousands of hungry beaks. The river she follows bends around a gentle curve, its surface catching the light in the same way it once did when flocks paused to drink in the cool of morning. She feels them there, not in sight, but in the air itself. In the whisper of wind through bare branches, in the creak of trunks swaying gently, in the glint of sunlight on water. It is as if the earth has kept their memory in its bones, carrying it quietly through the years. The day grows long, the sun climbing toward its peak. She finds a place to rest on a rocky ledge overlooking a broad valley. The view spreads in every direction, hills rolling like soft waves, a patchwork of forest and field, rivers threading silver through the land. It is quiet here, but not empty. Somewhere in the distance, the call of another bird rings out, and the sound carries far, echoing against the slopes before fading into the blue. The young pigeon closes her eyes for a moment, and in that stillness, she feels it again. The rhythm of thousands of wings moving together, the rush of air, the shadow that passed over the land like a drifting cloud. She can almost hear the low, rolling chorus of coos, the gentle brush of feathers, the heartbeat of the flock. It is not sorrow that fills her, only a deep, steady calm, as though the memory itself is alive, circling above her like a warm current of wind. When she takes flight again, the air feels lighter. Each beat of her wings is a note in a song that began long before her and will outlast her. She flies low over a stand of young trees, their slender branches swaying as she passes. Seeds fall from the cones and pods, scattering into the soil below, ready to root and grow. In this way, without knowing, she carries the story forward, just as those before her carried it into her own time. The sun tilts westward, its light softening into the golden hour. Shadows stretch across the fields, long and gentle. She lands in the fork of an old elm to rest once more, the bark cool beneath her feet. Above, the clouds move slowly, their shapes shifting into forms that seem almost familiar, curves like folded wings, edges like fanned tails. The world is speaking in its quiet way, and she listens. She does not think of herself as the last. The world is too wide, the sky too open for such certainty. Somewhere, perhaps beyond the hills or across the great rivers, there may be others. And even if not, the truth of her kind is still here, in the curve of the wind, in the strength of the trees, in the way the horizon always waits to be reached. As evening comes, she rises once more, gliding toward the setting sun. The light burns deep amber, spilling across the land in a warm tide. The rivers catch it, holding the color like molten gold. The hills are crowned in shadow, the fields washed in soft fire. She flies through it all, her silhouette cutting against the glowing sky. Below her, the land breathes, every hill and hollow shaped by the countless lives that have passed over it. Above, the stars begin to pierce the deepening blue, patient and unblinking. She is small beneath them, but she is not alone. In the sigh of the wind, in the soft roll of the earth, in the quiet pulse of the rivers, she hears them. The voices of her kin, the memory of their flight. The forest will remember. The sky will remember. And so will the wind. You are gone, and still you are everywhere, woven into the branches of the oaks, carried in the currents of the rivers, folded into the song of the morning breeze. Every shadow that glides over the grass is a reflection of your passing. Every whisper of leaves is your voice. And tomorrow the sun will rise again over a sky that still belongs to you.